Hi, I'm Rohit, and this is my review of the Anki Vector, which I've been having for a couple of weeks now. I pre-ordered the Vector because I was really impressed, or should I say fooled, by what they said he could do in the commercial on YouTube. I'll put a link to the commercial in the description, and I recommend you have a look at it before you watch this video so you'll have a better idea of what I'm talking about later. The commercial mentions Vector as the good robot, but I don't really think he is good enough to be called a good robot yet. I said yet because some of his features can be improved over time with software updates, but we don't really know when we'll be getting them. In the commercial, you can see the guy whispering, asking Vector to take a picture. There are two things wrong with it. Forget whispering. Vector sometimes doesn't even respond when you are talking normally, and the pictures that he takes are not really at par. It mostly is just a feature they added for the sake of it because the main purpose of the camera isn't to take pictures but to help him navigate around. Also, you'll see the guy talk pretty fast after saying the keyword "Hey Vector." Vector also detects his face immediately and calls him by his name. In real life, Vector is much slower. To summarize, the major problems with Vector are that he is slow, has a really low quality camera, edge detection doesn't always work, fails to recognize the keyword "Hey Vector" a lot of times, and if you need to ask him a question, make sure you have a lot of time because it isn't going to be quick. It involves two steps or two keywords, unlike Alexa or Google Assistant, where one keyword followed by a question is enough. Sure, he can detect edges and avoid falling off the edge, but if the edge is a little rounded, he fails to detect it and falls off. They say he can map his environment and charge himself back by finding his charging dock, but there have been cases where he's gotten lost, couldn't find his charger, and died. Don't expect him to pull off a Roomba, the vacuum cleaner which goes around your house and comes back to its charging dock almost always. You can almost quit the video here unless you really want to see him in action doing most of the things I mentioned so far, along with a few tricks he has up his sleeve. Let's start with asking Vector what time it is.
Hey Vector, what time is it?
The other cool thing that he can do is you can ask him for a fist bump and he will happily come and give it to you.
Hey Vector, give me a fist bump.
As of now, Blackjack is the only game that you can play with him, and this is how you do it.
Hey Vector, let's play blackjack. No.
So he will show a sad expression or celebrate based on whether he lost or won, and at the end of every game he will ask you if you want to play another round.
No.
So here you can see him get frustrated because I didn't want to play another round. Let's try asking him about the weather.
Hey Vector, is it cold outside?
He does do some cool animations when he displays the weather, but just notice the time he takes to process my question and respond to it. As of today, you can't really set an alarm on Vector, but they've given you an option of the timer.
Hey Vector, start a timer for 5 seconds.
You can ask him to take a picture of you, and he will face in the direction from where your voice came using his 4 microphones and take a picture. Mind you, he sometimes fails to see you and might just take a picture in the random direction he's facing.
Hey Vector, take a picture of me.
Like I mentioned before, the picture quality isn't that great, so don't expect too much from him. Usually you have to ask Vector what your name is and then he will say it, but sometimes when he sees a familiar face, he will say it by himself, like in this case. You can ask Vector to find his charger, and if he's close enough, he mostly finds it.
Hey Vector, find your charger.
This is one of the cases where he didn't understand what I said.
Hey Vector, find your charger.
In this case, he understands what I said, but struggles to find his charger because the monitor behind his charger was too bright and made it difficult for his camera to recognize it.
Hey Vector. Hey Vector.
So according to the manual, Vector ignores any commands if he has identified his charger and is in the middle of going towards it. Also, if you notice, I had to turn the monitor behind his charger off so that it made it easier for him to find his charger. Let me walk you through the two-step process of asking Vector any question.
Hey Vector. I have a question for you. How tall is the Empire State Building?
It's insanely frustrating when he takes such a long time to process information and then doesn't even come back with an answer.
Hey Vector. I have a question. How tall is the Empire State Building? What time is it in Japan? What time is it in Japan?
Vector comes with a cube and you can ask him to perform a few tricks with it.
Do a trick.
So when you say that, he starts looking for the cube, and after he finds it, he would take his position on any random side of the cube to perform his trick. You can ask Vector to do this trick specifically by asking him to do a wheelie. Again, like the previous trick, you can ask Vector to roll his cube and he would do what he is doing now. The app gives you 6 different color options to choose from for Vector's eyes, which happens almost instantaneously as you switch between them. The one thing that Vector doesn't like is being picked up, and this is how he reacts when you do it. A bonus piece of information that you wouldn't find in the manual. Vector does map his surroundings and remembers as he explores. But every time you pick him up, he resets the map, which could give him a hard time going back to his charger in case he's low on battery. He sometimes gets really close to the edge, but you can almost be sure that he wouldn't fall off as long as the edge isn't curved. Here's an example of what happens when he comes across a curved edge. At this point, he knows he can't get out of this position anymore and ends up making a sad face. Now about a design flaw with Vector. If you put him in a certain way on the edge, or in case he puts himself in such a position while exploring, it gets impossible for him to get out. At that point, he knows he's stuck, so he gives up and stops listening to any further commands which would need moving around.
Hey Vector. Start exploring. Find your charger.
Every time you move him out from such a position, he checks if he's free to move. And if he realizes that he is, he would start listening to any commands from that time onwards.
Hey Vector, start exploring.
This is the only command that I found myself using more often, because it's really amusing to see him move around by himself on your desk, and probably that's one of the few things he's good at. When I ordered him, I expected him to be like an Alexa or Google Home which could move around and also take pictures. Anki's on the right path by attempting to make something like Vector, but he isn't really helpful or useful in any way as of now. Yes, he is cute and has a character which responds to positive and negative commands, but he is more of a something nice to have than a something that could be useful like an Alexa or Google Home. Other assistants are way more responsive and advanced, and rightly so since they've been around for quite some time. After having Vector for almost 2 weeks, I ended up returning him because I didn't really feel he was worth the $250 I got him for. I hope I gave you enough information which could probably help you make a better decision before you spend your money on him. Feel free to leave your views in the comment section below and see you next time.